Well, welcome everyone. Glad to have you aboard. So, sadly, my presentation is probably the driest of them all. I can only assume that you're here because you lost a bet, or maybe you were voluntold to attend, or perhaps you're doing community service, or maybe you really are like me. You just enjoy studying this meta stuff. In fact, let's take a look at the poll. Aha, I just grabbed this before the session began. So, looks like nobody lost a bet. Two of you did indeed draw the short straw. Sorry for your loss. Sorry for your luck. Um, Six of you were voluntold to attend. If you don't know what voluntold means, it means your boss comes to you and says, "Well, we need somebody to do such and such a thing," and if nobody raises their hand, you're just going to be told to do it. So you might as well go ahead and take control of your fate and volunteer. Uh, Two of you are doing community service. Somebody working off your service to society, and but there are 24 of you. 75% of you really like this dry, nerdy stuff. That's what I like about the internet, is that it brings my tribe together. People like me who actually well, dig this stuff. So of course, all are welcome, and frankly, I can't afford to lose participants, but this session is probably best suited to decision makers and people like me who advise the decision makers. Whatever the case, I hope you stick around. I'm Harlan Williams. I'm an instructional designer with LSC Online, and I also teach economics. I've long had an interest in the economic side of higher education, not budgets and stuff, more like finance, public policy, regulation, etc. So this is a topic which is right in my wheelhouse. For staff involved in accreditation, compliance, and financial aid, the notion of regular and substantive interaction is probably an old one, going back several years. But for the rest of us, RSI may be a fairly unfamiliar concept. By the end, it's my intention for it to be a little less unfamiliar. Now, a short warning, I move kind of fast, but not to worry, this is being recorded and you can request a copy of my slide deck. So, two ways this can go. We can either discuss the how to RSI, or we can discuss what is regular and substantive interaction. The doing of RSI revolves around sustaining instructor presence in the course. There's an abundance of information available on increasing instructor presence. There's Quality Matters content, D2L videos, Texas DLA. I could spend 5 minutes just naming off sources. So, policy wonks rejoice. Today's focus will be on the principle of RSI itself, not so much on implementation. We'll be answering such questions as what is the rule? What is the rule's intent, with the related question, what is correspondence education and what is distance education? Who enforces this rule? What are the consequences of violation? And we're going to take a look at the strange case of Western Governors University. And we'll finally ask, how does all this apply to you? Regular and substantive interaction between instructors and students is a core component distinguishing distance education from correspondence education. We're going to be talking about that a lot throughout their presentation. In contrast to correspondence education, where students are not in regular and substantive interaction with instructors, distance education is eligible for Title IV financial aid because of the presence of RSI. That's the test. Regular interaction requires an institution to ensure, quote, prior to the student's completion of a course or competency, that there is the opportunity for substantive interactions with the student on a predictable and scheduled basis commensurate with the length of time and the amount of content in the course. That's a big old legal definition. Allergies. So let's go into some definitions here. Correspondence is a course provided by an institution under which the institution provides instructional materials by mail or electronic transmission, including examinations on the materials, to students who are separated from the instructor. Interaction between the instructor and student is limited, is not regular and substantive, and is primarily initiated by the student. Those are some big aspects of that definition. Correspondence courses are typically self-paced. Now, distance education means education that uses, one, the internet, two, one-way and two-way transmissions through open broadcast, closed circuit, cable, microwave, broadband lines, fiber optic, satellite, or wireless communication devices. 3, audio conferencing, or 4, other media used in a course in conjunction with any of the above technologies. Now, this is all with the goal being to deliver instruction to students who are separated from the instructor and to support RSI between the students and the instructor, either synchronously or asynchronously. Now, let's break apart the RSI definition. Regular interaction requires an institution to ensure, before the student completes a course or competency, that there is the opportunity for substantive interactions with the student on a predictable and scheduled basis, commensurate with the length of time and the amount of content in the course or competency. The institution is also responsible for monitoring the student's academic engagement and success. Substantive interaction is engaging students in teaching, learning, and assessment consistent with the content under discussion. It must include at least 2 of the following 5 components: providing direct instruction, assessing or providing feedback on student assignments, sharing knowledge or addressing inquiries regarding course material or skills, facilitating group discussions, and finally, implementing any additional teaching methods approved by the institution's or program's accrediting body. So I said at the top that we would not go into the how of RSI. I lied just a little bit. What we are looking at in this graphic are a variety of course activities, but only the green DE side crosses the RSI goal line. I actually think that this graphic is a little misleading because it seems to imply that CE and DE together make up RSI, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think how this should be interpreted is that it is necessary to pump up your CE activities on the left in the red to the DE level in order to achieve regular and substantive interaction. So, like for example, if you take your graded assignments without feedback, you need to add feedback to those to make them into a distance education qualified activity. Add content explanation to your weekly announcements. Bundle your video lectures with a discussion. That's actually a really good one. I'm going to use that one in my own course. And provide feedback to your quizzes as well. Now, from here, we can distill the 4 primary characteristics of RSI down to 1, initiated by the instructor. Interactions are not optional or left up to student discretion. Let that soak in for a second. Rather, they are an integral part of your instructional plan for the course. Frequent and consistent student interactions are repeated throughout the term. Focused on student success. Interactions should contribute to the student's progress toward course, program, and college learning objectives and be connected to the subject of the course. Interaction must be initiated by academic personnel who meet accrediting body standards. We're going to see a bit later on why that one can be a bugaboo for an institution. Now, what's the regulation or the law driving all this? That would be Title IV of the Higher Education Act, which authorizes a broad array of federal student aid programs that assist students and their families with financing the cost of a post-secondary education, as well as programs that provide federal students directly to post-secondary institutions of higher education. This is enforced by the U.S. Department of Education, with responsibility falling to the Office of Federal Student Aid and the Inspector General. Now, FSA runs the FAFSA, the free applications for federal student aid. They run the studentaid.gov, which is the website for receiving financial aid, and the Knowledge Center, which some of you may already be using. Now, just an aside, boy, I was thinking about this the other day as I was watching the news about the rollout of the FAFSA application. I would not want to be the person running FSA right now after that botched rollout. Just to show you that they mean business, here are a few FSA courses from 2023. I'm not going to read all that, but the March 14 Secret Shopper program. Let you take a look at that. On August 24th, They cracked down on money going to unaccredited programs. And then on October 31st, they lowered the broom on Grand Canyon University for misleading doctoral applicants about the cost of doctoral programs. I guess they lied to more than 7,500 former and current students. Now, what are the potential consequences? In a word, money. FSA can claw back awarded funds and kick the college off the Title IV program completely. The adverse effect on student financial aid is enormous. This could stop students from receiving direct loans, Pell Grants, teacher education assistance grants, federal supplemental educational opportunity grants, and federal work study. Now we've arrived to the strange case of Western Governors University. In a judgment issued by the Department of Education in 2017, WGU was found to be a correspondence educator rather than a distance educator, and thus was not eligible to participate in Title IV programs. In 2017, who were they? Who was Western Governors in 2017? Well, back then, they stood out as one of the preeminent providers of competency-based education within the United States. A nonprofit, fully online school, at the time, the university boasted an enrollment exceeding 83,000 students, underscoring its significant presence and influence in the world of higher education. It was founded by 19 governors in 1997. Why was WGU the target of the Inspector General investigation? One, more than 50% of its courses were found to be self-paced within the course start and course end dates. For the IG, this was essentially self-learning. Two, the unbundled faculty composition model. So with WGU, no single course authority existed. With WGU, the usual instructional tasks are divided between a student mentor, a faculty evaluator, and a course mentor. The feds didn't know what to do with that. They ruled that the student mentor role was not an instructor equivalent. And we talked about academically qualified. Taken together, this caused the feds to label WGU's curriculum to be correspondence education. This constituted a real threat to the then sort of burgeoning competency-based education thought model. Let's consider CBE courses for a moment. The consensus definition I found is that competency-based education is a method of academic instruction and evaluation based upon students demonstrating their mastery of a subject. But now, how does that differ from regular learning? Well, in traditional credit hour programs, more emphasis is placed on the amount of time students spend in seat rather than what is actually learned, at least according to Rasmussen University. So CBE separates time in seat from academic proficiency. Now, in my opinion, this is coming from me, in my opinion, this also factored into DE thinking of CBE courses as being self-learning. Now let's take a look at some other targets on the timeline here. In 2012, the Department of Education's Office of Inspector General released an audit of St. Mary of the Woods College, which found that the institution's online education programs did not include regular and substantive interaction. According to the audit, instructors teaching distance education courses at St. Mary of the Woods rarely used technologies such as the learning management system or online discussion forums. As a result, the OIG ruled that instructors did not deliver lectures or initiate discussions with students. Tutoring and other instructional resources were provided at the student's discretion only. 80% of assignments were due 2 weeks before the term ended, and the remaining 20% of assignments were due at the end of the term. This is from the OIG report. As a result, the Inspector General determined that St. Mary of the Woods was in violation of the 50% rule and should return to the federal government over $42 million in misawarded student financial aid. Let's move on to 2015. The Inspector General charged the Higher Learning Commission with approving the substantive change applications of 6 institutions wishing to offer competency-based education. Quote, even though the applications described the proposed programs as self-paced programs, but they did not clearly indicate that the programs would include regular and substantive interaction. Moving on in the timeline to 2016, the IG conducted a similar audit of the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. The IG found that WASC did not sufficiently evaluate whether proposed competency-based education programs included faculty-initiated, regular, and substantive interaction. So for HLC and WASC, no fines were levied as financial aid was not affected. But the consequences were perhaps more dire. Both accrediting bodies had their reputations besmirched and risked losing the ability to accredit at all. So returning to Western governors, here's what we know from the IG's findings. In 2014, approximately 62% of the students sampled from Western governors took at least one course that didn't quite meet the distance education standards. So that's going to exceed the government's threshold of 50%. Because of this, the IG wanted Western governors to reimburse $713 million in federal financial aid funds, just dwarfing St. Mary's of the Woods fine. Now, wait a minute. In a stunning reversal, in 2019, the Office of Federal Student Aid overruled its own Inspector General and let WGU off the hook, saying that the ambiguity of the law and regulations and the lack of clear guidance available at the time of the audit period made that fine unnecessary. It is somewhat interesting to note, for me anyway, that at the time of this reprieve, the education secretary was Betsy Voss, a Trump appointee known for pushing deregulation and privatization. So could that have had something to do with their reversal? Who knows? But it does seem likely. It does seem to be at least correlation. In the wake of the WGU case, the U.S. Department of Education issued updated guidance for institutions receiving Title IV funds called the Distance Education and Innovation Ruling. This new rule maintained and affirmed the existing RSI position, okay, but also updated regulatory definitions of distance education, correspondence courses, direct assessment, and competency-based programs. It clarified the financial aid disbursement process for CBE students, competency-based, and eliminated references to outdated technologies. So I think that was more or less another nail in the coffin of the fax machine, I guess. So we are starting to bring it home now. What does all this mean for community colleges? For community colleges across Texas, about 14% of their budget comes from tuition and fees. For Lone Star College, my employer, that number is more than double to 30%. While I cannot now report on how much of federal financial aid goes to tuition and fees for Texas community colleges in general, for Lone Star College, federal aid accounts for 81% of tuition and fees and 24% of the total budget. So as much as my task here is to advise you on the ins and outs of RSI, depending on your financial picture, it might not have a significant impact on your budget. Depends on your picture. Now, just as an aside, you'll notice I've specified direct student aid. So this was an intentional distinction. Grant monies for TRIO, STEM, Title III, Title V, et cetera, are not subject to RSI scrutiny. When college administrators and faculty members, this is about compliance. When college administrators and faculty members are unclear about how to comply with the education department's rules, they would be wise to have defensible processes. That is, a college's policy for supporting regular and substantive interaction should be clear and should articulate a procedure for ensuring that the policy is enforced. Also, administrators and faculty should be able to argue why the policy and procedures are what they are. That way, should an audited institution be cited for a violation, their defense will be ready. My recommendation to get started is to lean into your existing programs. As an institution, you probably already have some systems in place to ensure compliance. If you've done nothing else, you've had to consider accreditation. In our region, that's mainly SACS. I've not been involved with SACS accreditation, but my understanding is that they require a quality enhancement plan, which advocates increased instructor involvement. If your institution has implemented Quality Matters full scale, you are also already well clear of having correspondence courses. And then, of course, whatever other course quality rubric you may be using. There's COLT, Quality Online Learning and Teaching, OSCAR, Open SUNY Course Quality Rubric, the Illinois Online Network, and of course, Blackboard's rubric. So it's not my intention here to be Chicken Little running around declaring that the sky is falling. My task here is to give you a response to the very reasonable question, why? Why does it matter if I'm engaged with my students so long as I provide the necessary instructional materials? Why are you pestering me to have virtual office hours or use Zoom and WebEx more often? Because of RSI. In conclusion, all I'm saying to you is this: don't let the Department of Education catch you with your pants down like Winnie the Pooh and his buddies here. There is potentially a lot of money at stake, from hundreds of thousands to perhaps millions. So be prepared to cover your assets. And don't get triggered. I can say that because I teach economics. Any questions or comments? I'm willing to take them. Just
Hey,
going to show you
Harlan, I
this.
got a question here.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
This was posted on the Hoover app that I actually saw. It says for faculty who are offering weekly synchronous online meetings, what more should or could they do to add RSI to their online course?
Well, if you're scheduling them weekly, you are already mainly on the way there. I would say that actually you are actually already there. If you really wanted to amp it up just a little bit, if you have some students who are not attending, reach out to them. So that'd be my answer for that. So I'm just going to end by saying I've got 12 or 13 citations in my presentation, and I'll provide a complete list on the last slide. But these four here are your most fundamental. I derived my first several slides from the first one, RSI in distance learning, from the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. I highly recommend that you read this one. They put a lot of effort into crafting this document, and it shows. The second one, RSI, Background Concerns and Guiding Principle, is from the Online Learning Consortium. It fills in all the details, especially background information. The first two are secondary sources. This next one I'm about to show you is straight from the Department of Education, the Distance Education and Innovation Rule. Okay, take a look at that one. And just to be complete, you may want to take a look at the Higher Education Act, a primer written by the Congressional Research Service, which is a service of the Library of Congress.
All right, Harlan, I got another question and then also a comment.
Okay.
It says, how should we track off LMS contacts to support our engagement? And the comment was, I use a lot of text messaging and phone calls to disengage students.
That is an excellent question, because a good bit of what we do is not necessarily documented in the doing. However, what you can do is document it in your syllabus. Okay, so that's going to be an official document that you can show your chair, your lead, and then whoever the accrediting body is, that yes, this is what I do. I reach out to my students, and I provide them a phone number, or I ask them, or rather I ask them for their phone numbers or for their personal emails, or whatever, and I text them and I reach out to them and personally. Did that answer your
Okay.
question? I hope I did.
Let's see. That's from Jillian. Jillian, you can feel free to put in the chat. Okay, she says, yes, you did answer the question. We got some more questions coming in here, Harlan. Are you ready? Next question is from Heather Cannon. She wants to know, can you address how to avoid the conflict of having set times for live interaction with a fully online course?
How to avoid the conflict of having set times for live interaction. Hmm. When you have, so I think what you're saying is you're asking about synchronous events within an online course. Uh, and of course, the world of online is so muddy these days. You can have an online course which is basically asynchronous, but then schedule a synchronous event. Or like a cousin of mine, she also surprisingly she also teaches economics. She I think she teaches in Ohio. She has her course is online, but it's fully synchronous. She actually might be a better person to answer that question. I think that again, and I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but again, I think that the answer is is to document everything that you're doing. Uh, if you are the instructor of this course, then I think that having having links to the online event within your learning management system, if you work for Lone Star College, that would be D2L, is sufficient documentation along with your syllabus to show that you are uh, making a good faith effort to connect with your students in a substantive way.
Okay. We have another question that says, any recommendations from an administrative perspective for documenting that a college is providing RSI across the board?
Say the question one more time. I was
Yes.
fiddling with my light; it went out.
Any
Go ahead.
recommendations from an administrative perspective for documenting that a college is providing RSI across the board?
Hmm. I can only speak to that question from the course level, as I'm not an administrator. That actually might be a better question, a question that's better responded to by someone who is involved with SACS accreditation. So I don't really have a very good answer for that. And the documentation that I referenced did not look in depth at evidence. It looked more at policy. So I'm sorry, I can't really answer that one.
Okay, I have one comment from Gail. She says she keeps a thorough spreadsheet of all her contact with students. And I'm not sure if you can read the chat, but it says here from Kimberly Boss, she suggests that you can record the sessions and create video quizzes. That way, students who cannot attend the session will be able to show that they did watch and learn from it.
Yes.
And then,
I'm
if you
sorry,
want
go
to
ahead.
address that, go ahead.
Um, Again, I have to speak to my personal experience supporting our learning management system, which is D2L, and we have a partner application called USIA that does have a video quiz feature. And in that video quiz feature, it would indeed document that the students have seen that video and even the percentage of the video that they saw. Okay. Um, but even that is more contingent upon the student coming to the content rather than the instructor reaching out to the student.
Mm,
So for the RSI part of that, I would say that you would reach out the link to the video to the student in their email or as a text, something like that. Okay, it's the difference between a passive communication and active communication. that I think that RSI is looking for the instructor to be much more actively involved in communicating to the students rather than waiting for the students to reach out to them.
All right. Thank you, Harlan. Are you ready for another one?
Yes.
Okay. From Jillian, this says, how do flexible due dates as accommodations impact self-paced?
Okay. Now, I heard the word accommodation. So what I'm hearing then is that is an exception. So because it is an exception, I would say that it does not adversely affect whether or not your course is meeting that 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 threshold. And remember, the threshold I gave you is 50% of a program, not 50% of a course. All righty. So it's I don't even know if we can even say I'm not really sure that we can say a course. Well, this course is meets 50% of RSI. I don't know that we can say that with authority. I think that what we have to do is make a good faith effort to reach out to our students. There's a quote and I can't remember, I don't remember who said this, but and forgive me, but there's and this is from the Supreme Court, that some Supreme Court justice says, I don't know what porn is, but I know it when I see it. I think it's kind of like this within a course, is that you may not necessarily know how to define it within the course, but you certainly know if you're doing it or not. Okay.
All right. We have another question. They just keep coming in. Harlan, you ready?
Okay.
Okay. Kimberly says, how well are our faculty doing? Have you seen the numbers?
I have not seen the numbers, and that's actually a really, really interesting and good question, because it it asks, how do we even find that data? And again, that sounds like an accreditation question, because I'm not certain what evidence SACS or whoever is working with SACS needs to fulfill those requirements. Um, hmm. I'm not entirely sure. Not entirely sure. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for that.
Fair enough. We do have another question from the Hoover app. It says, piggybacking on Jillian's question, what about having weekly due dates, but modules are open so students are allowed to turn in work early?
That would be okay. Yes, that one would fall within the spirit of attempting to implement RSI within your course, because it's still not self-paced. You still have dates. You're not waiting for everything to be due at the end of the semester. You still have dates. It's just that you're allowing your students to complete the work sooner. That's fine. I'll tell you, even from my own course, I use the what we call it the third-party integration, which is McGraw-Hill, and for the McGraw-Hill content, I allow I set a couple days before the course end date for all the work to be done. However, I still have milestones. I still have due dates within the course. It's just to keep the students on track. But in reality, it's not completely due until the end of the semester. So there's a due date, but there's no charge, there's no penalty rather, for not having completed it by that particular due date. at least the due date, versus the end date, which is the end of the semester. So, and I believe that also is in keeping with the spirit of implementing RSI within the course.
All right, we've got about 8 minutes left, and I don't see any more questions. All right.
Well, I guess
It's gotten quiet.
thank you all
People are
for
saying
attending.
thank you, saying it's very interesting, giving you a round of applause.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Got someone, I think it says Jillian's going to schedule an appointment with you so you can help her with her class.
Uh-oh.
They're going to start coming in, Harlan.
That'll learn me. All
All
right.
right.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for attending.
Oh, we've got Nancy Wilkes says, Harlan, it was Justice Stewart in his concurring opinion. I'm not
Oh,
going to try to read this name, Jacobellis versus Ohio.
oh, thank you. Oh, you looked up that court date, the Supreme Court opinion that I referenced. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for
Yes.
looking that up.